She's a world-renowned sitar player and composer, and the way she has beautifully blended innovation with culture, it's beautiful. And we are in conversation with Anoushka Shankar. Welcome to NDTV.
Thank you so much.
I have manifested this day because last time I interviewed her, it was virtual Zoom, and it's terrible to do Zoom interviews. Just can't connect live with a person.
No, it's not the same.
This person I wanted to connect with.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So welcome to Mumbai.
Thank you.
Let's start with this. First of all, congratulations. 2 Grammy nominations.
Thank you.
2nd of February, we are waiting for that. But you're used to it. Now, Grammy nominations is something Anoushka Shankar is very used to, I think, from childhood, from dad to you, now your sister also, both of you getting nominated together. I mean, how was it then when your dad used to win his Grammys? He has got Lifetime Achievement Award also, and now you guys always getting nominated.
I mean, there's a lot to say there. That's a lot of questions in one. So, I mean, I have to say, you're never used to something like this. It's not something you can take for granted. It's very exciting. It feels wonderful. It's not the same as the first time. Like the first time, it's something unachievable that you haven't crossed. And I was quite young. It was my 3rd album. I think I was 21 with the first nomination. And I have a really clear memory of being on holiday in Brazil and getting the news from my parents. I called because I wanted to find out if I knew, Nora's album Come Away With Me had come out that year. So I was waiting to see if she had been nominated. And I was like, was she nominated? Was she nominated? And they said, yeah, not just once, but 8 times. And I was like, what? That's amazing. And they said, but wait, you're also nominated. Mm-hmm. And I just remember like screaming and running around these trees. Like I was so excited. So that first time is something quite special, but it's always special.
Do you remember the time when your dad used to win the Grammys and how you would celebrate that?
He was another animal entirely. Let me tell you about my father and Grammys. So sometime in my teenage years, my mom realized she couldn't find his Grammys.
What?
Let me correct that. She couldn't find his Grammy.
Okay.
And so she's like, okay, this already became a talking point and a joke. How do you lose a Grammy? He didn't know where it was. He said he left it in a suitcase at someone's friend's house some year or something. So she's like, okay, she found out you can call the Grammy Foundation and you can request them to make another Grammy. And so she called them and they said, yeah, we can do that, no problem. Which is the one that he's lost? And she said, what do you mean? And they said, well, he's got 2 Grammys. Which one? He didn't even know that he had 2 Grammys. He just thought he had 1.
So basically he has lost 2.
No, yeah, he'd lost 2, but he didn't even know he had 2. So that's my Grammy experience of growing up, is that's just not what he cared about. It was about the music. And in a way, it's such a beautiful reminder of what's actually important. So by the time I was born, he already had those 2. Yeah. So he won a 3rd in my experience. And then right before he passed away, he got a nomination alongside me, which sucked because I lost against him. But he also got told about the Lifetime Achievement Award, which he is the only Indian musician to have received. And I'm really grateful he found out about that.
That was the 55th Grammy Awards.
That's right, yeah. Yes. And I'm really grateful he found out right before he passed. He was very happy about that.
That was a great, but like you said, he was a legend, and Ustad ji, I mean, what else can we say about that? The amazing, the legend he was. I have nothing to say about him. I feel very little and small when I talk about him. But let's talk about your journey here. You have been touring. It started from India in 2022 December. And then here we are, a whole circle back. And here we are again. And you will be finishing this winter another chapter 3.
Yes. So, I mean, in a way, I've just been touring forever.
Yes, forever.
But what I started in December 2022 was a journey with a new band and with an intention to create what I called chapters. I wanted to release music across 3 mini albums that eventually would connect and tell a story. But I wanted to bring in that feeling of evolution and kind of open-endedness to the experience of touring. So what I did was I formed a band, we did a show with a lot of my previous music, And then I started making and recording and releasing chapter 1. We kicked a bunch of songs out and started adding in chapter 1. Then I made and recorded chapter 2 while we were touring chapter 1. We kicked out more songs, add in chapter 3. So by the time chapter 3 comes out in March, all the old songs will be gone. And it's a full 3 chapters cohesive tour. And it's been a really lovely experience, like just feeling like the audience and the tour is part of the evolution of the music as well.
And this album is dedicated to India. I mean, you've been inspired by India when it comes to chapter 3. Tell us a little about that, and also where it all started. Do you remember sitting in Goa and thinking about it?
Yes, you know a lot. Basically this all started in Goa. Like I had my first holiday after the pandemic with my kids, and it was my first time returning to Goa since I'd had kids. And it was a place that meant a lot to me in my teens and 20s. So it was very meaningful to be back. And I think there was something about that, you know, New Year's Day, I was writing in my journal and I just felt like, oh my God, I've really come home. Like there's something about this that feels so good. I want to make music that feels like this. And then I thought I would do 3 chapters to kind of connect to my 3 cultural roots in a way, Europe, North America, and especially India. So the journey sort of started here as my whole musical journey started. So yeah, it felt important that the final chapter be most overtly influenced by India and Indian music, and to finish the tour here later.
You know, touring, it has been a part of, such an important part of your life. Do you remember the first time you started touring, or the first stage that you took while you're touring? Any experience there?
Yeah, so my first tours were with my father. As is so traditional, you know, disciples and apprentices learn alongside their guru on stage as well. So for a few years before I even started touring solo, I was in his ensemble, and then I continued that also until he passed. So my first show was in Delhi, in Siri Fort, almost an exact anniversary. It was the end of February 1995, when I was 13, and it was his 75th birthday celebration. So there was a lot of his disciples had all come together from all over India to play. But there was a bit in the middle of the show where it was like my debut. It was my first show. So everyone else put their instruments down and it was my turn to play like a 10-minute solo. And I really remember the whole show leading up to that moment. My heart was just getting like louder and louder and louder. I was so scared. But I was playing with Zakir Uncle for my first show, and he was so amazing and so helpful. Like he really talked to me before the show about how he had been 11 or 12 when he played with Ali Akbar Khan Sahab for his first show, and how this is something we went through and that it's okay, and he had my back, and it was really beautiful.
And now, after so many years, when you look back, can you tell us a few things that you have learned through a tour now when you go on stage, and what are your rituals?
So I would say my first years of touring, I had a lot of stage fright. I had a lot of anxiety. But
I do not believe this.
People wouldn't think so, because I touch wood, I'm wherever wood is, I don't know. But I'm very comfortable on stage now, most of the time. But I've been doing it for 30 years. You know, you don't suddenly wake up able to do something. So walking out in front of thousands of people can be very, very frightening. And I think my approach as a much younger person, or as a newer performer, was to try and get it right. Was to try and get it perfect, you know, to present something safe and impressive. And what that did was create a big distance in my experience of being on stage, between myself and the audience, between myself and the other musicians. And over the years, what I allowed to come in more and more was a bit more playfulness, a bit more experimentation, a bit more trust that I know what I'm doing, that the audience is there with us, that my musicians have my back, and you can take risks. And you can have fun, you know, and that changes everything. So now it feels a lot more immediate and a lot more vulnerable on stage, and that actually allows so much more beauty to come in.
Unlearning so many things, you know, as you grow up. Yeah, and perfection is something that we are, in our head we create that.
Yes.
And I think also this growing up as a musician also teaches you so much when you are growing up with your children, because you're a single mom. This part which you said, I'm a mother, and I completely understand unlearning and learning so many things and letting go. Well, you know, with the first child you're different, with your second child you're different, right? So tell me about your journey about motherhood, and how do you tour with being a single mom of 2 boys, touring? I mean, we all are working mom, but I cannot compare my life with you, because...
No, but it's all difficult in different ways, right? Like sometimes my kids hate what I do. And sometimes,
I don't blame them.
Sometimes they love it, because when I'm not touring, sometimes I'm home all day. Unlike someone who's maybe working 9 to 5 every single day, I can pick them up and I can spend the whole afternoon and evening with them. And so it has that ebb and flow. But yeah, I think someone has to do this as well to understand what it's like. Sometimes people say, God, touring must be so hard, performing must be so hard. And I remember some of those most difficult moments parenting where like I'd finally get the 2 kids to bed and just think, where's my applause now? Because this is so much harder than what I do on stage,
Absolutely.
And it is so unsung and so unrecognized.
Who told us this?
It's something insane. And yeah, I think as an artist, it can be a very, very beautiful thing. Like the things that it cracks open in you as a person and as a mother, and the stuff that you end up reparenting or unlearning or healing, all the traumas that you grow up with, anything that happened to you as a kid, the kids hit those markers, you have to face it if you don't want to just... And so it's a huge growth curve.
Yeah.
If you show up for it.
Yeah.
And all of that bleeds into the art. Of course it does. So yeah, in an artistic sense, it's enriching. But I think there's a lot of patriarchal elements to what make it really difficult, because I think a lot of male artists are kind of propped up by society a bit more easily. Like there's so often a kind of understanding of the artist that needs to go away and record until 3 a.m. or deepen and get lost in their writing for... who's going to do that when...
Yeah. You have to get lost in their books. And
from between 9 and 3 is when I need to get creative, and wait for the muse to strike, and then, it's done. So that stuff, you really have to change how I do what I do. And I guess it just takes a great deal of commitment to all the things. I don't get any of it perfect, but as we said, we just do our best. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You have been touring in India. Tell me, what has been the greatest part of coming back to your country and touring here and interacting with the fans here? And also, what are the challenges that you faced when you're touring in India?
So, in one way, I would say that by touring globally across so many countries, I found there's less difference than one would expect. By and large, you have audiences and they have a great deal of understanding of music and art. Today, it's so international, it's so nuanced. So it's not like there's a huge difference, but there's a particular flavor to the way I feel sort of welcomed back here, which does feel like it's a coming home. And then there's a certain proportion of people who may call out my songs or know what, and that feels really, really beautiful. And on a personal level, I always have that sense that even though the bulk of the music I make now is non-classical, a bit more experimental, my roots are in Indian classical music. That's where it all comes from for me. So there is that feeling of coming back, which feels really beautiful.
We have heard different kinds of stories when you're touring around. Tell me some weird stories. I remember this Berlin story that happened to you, and all your clothes. And
clothes it was stressful, but...
Tell me about these stories. Come on.
I had like nice outfits for the whole tour, and my hair and my makeup, I carry all my stuff. I do it all myself, but I carry my stuff, and I have my stuff didn't arrive in Berlin on the show day.
I can't even imagine the stress.
But luckily my tour manager had a birthday on tour, so I had one dinner outfit. Like I had a skirt and a belt and a top. And I finally just had to go, okay, I'm just gonna perform in a skirt and a top. Like this is not Indian, this is not fancy. But it is what it is. The most important thing was the finger pick, the misrab, and you wouldn't believe it. Like I put out a message on social media, and within 20 minutes, someone in Berlin who lived near the venue, who plays sitar with fingers my size, saw my message. But this is what happens. This is what's wild about touring, and that's just one of a million stories. And these are the okay stories. The traumatizing ones are the ones when something happens to your instrument, and that happens all too often also.
Really?
And that can be horrible. And I've done lots over the years to mitigate. I don't want anything to happen to my instrument, but for 15 years now I've always traveled with 2, for example, which not everybody can do.
Yeah.
I buy a seat for one of them, which not everybody can do. So I have one on the plane next to me.
Your
one
sitar
sits in a seat, yeah.
Has a seat?
Yeah.
In a plane?
Yeah.
Her sitar has a seat
yeah.
in a plane.
because otherwise you don't get it or it breaks. And and we'll always have two, and they'll travel separately. So if I'm in one car and the band is in another car, we'll always have them in two, because we've just, over the years, we've seen it all happen. Anything can happen. One car gets lost, doesn't make it in time for the show, or one set of luggage doesn't arrive. So we just have, touring is like a matrix.
What happened that day in Berlin that you...
I wore this man's misrab and gave him a ticket to the show. And
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was thinking I had to change the set and play like nothing but slow lullabies that I could just maybe play really slowly without the finger pick. But luckily it was fine. And what always happens, and I slightly hate this, but it was the best show of the tour. Because there's a crackle and an energy to when we all come together and everyone bends over backwards and makes it work. And then there's like fireworks on stage because it's such a release.
You know, it happens with my interviews also. When you prepare too much, the interview is so bad. But when you don't, and you just go with your instinct, and you just want to ask questions that you always thought you wanted to ask.
Well, you seem pretty prepared today,
See?
so...
No. I just know things, but this conversation is just flowing. Right. So that's what I like about my interviews. Tell me some other incidents that have been maybe too stressful or extremely funny.
Okay, stressful one. When I was 24, I was touring with my dad. We arrived in Arles in the south of France, and all of the sitars had broken.
What?
So his two, my two. This is before we did seats, you see. And both, like, all the gourds shattered like eggshells. Like, so you opened the sitar and there was nothing underneath. It couldn't be played, couldn't be fixed. Nothing possible at all. Everyone went into emergency mode, like, how are we going to do the show? Does anyone in France have a sitar? Nothing good. Also quality, right?
Yeah.
It has to sound good. I had a boyfriend at the time who was half Spanish, who lived in Delhi, so he had a Spanish passport. So without a visa, he could fly 2 sitars from Delhi to us in France. He arrived like an hour before the show time from the airport, and it was like hero of Arles, but like we got to do the show, and that was great. Yeah,
that's something.
It was pretty crazy. There was another time in Italy where same thing happened. My 2 sitars shattered like eggs. This is like, I'm telling you,
this is a regular thing. Why
this
don't
is,
you guys talk to
airlines are shocking. Sometimes they make you sign a waiver when you check in an instrument that it's not their responsibility. Otherwise, they won't carry it. It's really, anyone that knows anything to fix things, like, it's really horrible. So many of my friends deal with this. It's awful. We're very helpless. And then if you can afford to buy a seat for it or something. But otherwise, you're stuck.
Most people
You're
can't.
very stuck. It's awful. So then I had this promoter whose brother was a hippie and had traveled to India in the 70s and had like a cheap sitar hanging on a wall as a decoration. So he was trying to tell me that I should be able to still do the show because I can play this thing that sounds like a children's toy from, you know, dang, 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 dang. And I was like, I can't play this, you know. So we were going like this for like ever, because he was saying I was breaking contract and I was saying I can't play the show. And again, literally 20 minutes before the show, the sitars I got sent from somewhere like arrived. So it's weird. Things just...
Has it ever happened that you couldn't play a show?
Only when I've had hand injuries, which is never nice. But there's been a few times in the past. I used to struggle with tendinitis in my 20s. I didn't really know about how to take care of overuse and what to do to mitigate, you know, the fitness required and stuff. So there was a period of time where it would flare up too badly and it would be more injurious to play, and I had to cancel. Once I had to cancel because I got scratched by a cat.
What?
That was really embarrassing, but I couldn't play because he just dug into my arm and it totally opened right here on this hand. So if I had played, it would have like dug into this cut the whole time. But that was awful because everyone's like, what happened to your hand? And I'm like, cat scratch.
God, I can't imagine how you would have said that.
No, I should have had a better story.
Okay, you know, 2024, we have seen so many concerts happening in India, and you have to tell me, which artist have you enjoyed most watching in a concert?
Ooh, I can't do that.
Come on.
No, I just love watching shows too much. Like, I have transcendent experiences all the time watching shows. Who recently has been mind-blowing? I don't know. I'm really bad at this. I get so put on the spot when everyone says like favorite book, last favorite
Okay,
show.
2024, any concert that you have watched that you really liked?
I saw Niels Fram again in the summer after quite a few years, and watching him do his new work was pretty amazing, and watching him in Germany, where same experience. He's from Germany, so watching him in Germany, the audience was really special. I'd also rewind to Lollapalooza here, even though I was playing also.
Yes.
But getting to play at a festival and then watch other acts, even Sting finishing the show and having been with him backstage, but then being with like Kirsch Calais and you know, just friends who we'd made that record together that he'd featured on nearly 20 years ago. So it felt like a lot of nostalgia and coming together.
You know, this 2024, Coldplay is playing.
I know.
This weekend.
Can't miss that. No. But I've definitely heard about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Diljit Dosanjh, it was his year, 2024. Yeah, but you know, as a musician, I know you play the sitar, but you are also a composer. Tell me, what do you think about musicians being told what kind of lyrics they should write? Because if they are not appropriate for the audience.
Give me some context.
Like Diljit Dosanjh, he was told when he's performing in different cities, he cannot sing a song which has alcohol or drugs in it. So he had to twist the songs. But I want to know, what is your opinion? Because it's freedom of speech. He's a musician, he should be allowed. But at the same time, we also understand why they're saying no to it, because teenagers get influenced by it. What is your take as a musician?
Obviously, I can't.
Because you have a teenager now.
Yeah, and he listens to a lot of things I wish he didn't, you know. But so did I when I was a teenager. I think that's part of growing up. I think that steps into a larger conversation that I don't know if I can answer stuff, but there are certain things that are about, is this about parents having the right to decide, or is this about a country or a state or a government having the right to decide? Like, where is this personal, where is this an overarching law? And that's obviously different country to country. So, you know, freedom of speech.
Yes.
Do we have it in this country?
Let's not talk about that.
Hopefully we do.
Hopefully we do. Yeah, we do. Another thing that everybody has been talking about, a lot of musicians have been talking about, is the infrastructure in India when a concert is happening. You know, have you ever faced any issues, or what do you think can be done?
Okay, so I have less expertise in the area of like the outdoor festivals and their setups, and I think things are really getting better. There's been a lot of renovations in recent years, but across the years I've definitely had experiences, and if I work with teams that come from other countries, or if, let's say, wherever we're from, we're touring across countries, this is definitely one of the countries where we naturally tend to have to factor in more time to prepare, because things will be a little, you know, crazier logistically. There's more safety issues with lighting and cables and just that stuff that we tend to have to be a little bit more careful. It is getting better. But, you know, Siri Fort, for example, I'm mentioning again, but it's, you know, Delhi's most prominent concert hall. And I can't speak for the concert hall itself, but in my own experience, I've performed concerts twice where the power went out and the music had to stop because the power went, you know. And it's like, how is this happening in the capital's biggest concert hall? And again, this was a little while ago, things are better, but there has been that kind of process here and there, but I really do see improvement.
Okay, coming back to what is happening right now, you're from LA and we have seen the LA fires. I hope everything is fine where you are.
I'm very fortunate, not just, so I grew up in San Diego, which is a bit further south, but I have a lot of friends and family in LA. So in my direct life, I'm very fortunate. All my loved ones are okay. The ripple effect is unimaginable though.
Yes.
You know, I know people whose friends are all, you know, losing homes and evacuating and all of that. And you know, growing up with fires was a thing. That's something that happens there. My high school became an evacuation center once. Our whole gymnasium was full of people because so many homes burned down in San Diego. But it was an anomaly for it to get that bad. Whereas now with climate change, the level to which it's gone is really tragic and really quite frightening.
Absolutely, and everybody has been talking about it. We just hope things get better. But it is great to have you back home, and we would want to see you more often in Mumbai, here with me. Because I absolutely enjoy having conversations with you. Thank you so much, Anoushka.
Thank you.